Hey everyone, it's Ian here, and I'm just kind of poking around Backgammon Masters Awarding Body's new site, and I figured I would make a video that shows how to use all the really cool new features that are on here. Um, and it's a great resource if you're a backgammon player. And let's just try to make this video in such a way that you can see all the cool features of this site and use them in a most efficient way. So obviously, I had mentioned new site. Tony Lazard, Dmitry Obakov, and Bernard Mayer essentially developed this site and maintain the database, if you will, of matches that are available for viewing and player rankings and things like that. So let's just start with the about page. This is nothing really new. It's sort of the old explanation of rules, clock settings, proficiency levels, targets for PR and EP, treatment of inactive players, and then how to record and transcribe, as well as gives the names of the three guys that are running this site. So thank you to them. Really appreciative of this awesome resource. But nothing really new here. This is just a general splash page for About BMAB. Let's go ahead and just take a look, though, at these tabs over here, because this is the real meat of this site, if you will. So let's start with player titles. What this is essentially your ranking list of players on Earth that do BMAB submissions. So if they don't do BMAB submissions, they aren't on here. I think BMAB is really awesome, and I strongly encourage backgammon players to do this because it just gives an honest look at how strong you are as a player, and you can earn cool titles in doing so. So taking a look here, we see this table, sort of it's a filterable, sortable Excel-ish chart where currently it's set to the last 300 PRs. So that's your last 300 experience points. It is a moving average of those. So if you play a 7-point match and submit, that's 7 EXP. Only your last 300 count for this average. It is counted as one long match. It's not like quantized into, oh, I played a 2 in this 7-point match that lasted one game, and I played a 3 in this 15-point match that lasted a ton of games. It's by decision, so it's not like just a quantized per match average, but just a general idea of what this is, a ranking of players by their average PR, so you can kind of see how people stack up, how different players stack up relative to other players on Earth. So it's pretty cool. Very, very useful. But that's only scratching the surface of what we have here. So let's go ahead and take a look. You can sort by different strings of letters that are in someone's name, if you will. So let's just say that I wanted to know who the best player in the world that's named John is for whatever reason. So I'll go ahead and type John into here, and you can see it returned all of the people that are named John or have John in their name. If there was like a something Johnson or something, right? That would show up too. But you can see, oh, here's a ranking of the PRs of players whose first name is John. Or maybe I wanted to see how players named Florin are, right? I can do that too. So kind of a cool way to do this, neat filter. You can obviously type your own name in and see how you play and find yourself on the list. Obviously, really, really neat. But again, this is very basic stuff. We used to have this more or less in the old system, just this nice sortable list. Now we've got the filter. Let's go ahead and just take a look at ratings before we take a look at anything else. So one of the new things that this site has is an ELO system. I believe it's pronounced that way. It's not an initialism. I think it's after like I want to say, he was a mathematician, chess player. I know he was, I don't want to say it because I don't want to get it wrong. But anyway, so basically what this is a rating system that measures how you do against other players, and it takes into account the opponent's strength in your rating. So right now, Rolf Jonas, who does not submit matches to BMAB, super strong player, probably would be close to GM level if he did, if not GM level, or very strong Grandmaster maybe. He doesn't submit to BMAB, but he does have the highest elo on this site by quite a bit. So super strong German player, 1730, and he's on the list. We also can exclude players that have not played in the last 14 months. So he's been inactive for a little while. So you can see that Frank Simon actually has the highest elo of people that have played in recency. So that's a very cool little feature there. But again, this is pretty basic stuff. This isn't really what we're looking for. So let's go ahead and hone in on a player and see how they have done in their matches by looking at their individual statistics page. So I'm just going to click on Arkady Sinise. He's obviously a super strong player from Ukraine. And I'm now on his individual profile page. So taking a look at this, I see his BMAB title, M1, super good player. His PR, he's actually very close to Grandmaster. And a little bit of a summary of his matches. But here's the really cool thing. So there are several charts that you can look at. The first one just being a line graph of rating versus experience. So you can see how his elo has changed over a given period of time. I'm going to feel like such an idiot if it's pronounced elo, but I'm pretty sure it's elo. And match locations. You can see he plays mostly in North America, but some in Europe as well. And this shading within this pie chart tells you his win-loss record. So, maybe this isn't a good example of this, but perhaps a player travels somewhere and they feel super jet lagged and they don't play well and then they lose a lot. You would actually maybe see that in this pie chart. He obviously wins more than he loses. So there's this darker shading that's outside of this dashed line tells you that he is over 500 for that particular piece of pie. And here he plays most of his matches in North America, so Europe only gets this magenta sliver, and he won the one Europe match he has. You can also see the same thing for match lengths. So again, the darker shading means a win, the dashed line is the 500 line, and you can see how he fares in matches of different lengths. You can see how he does against opponents of different ratings in this bar graph. So does he win against really good players? Does he maybe win less than he should against players that are weaker than him? And then also you can see when the matches were played, so you can kind of see how he does over time. Someone who's like a learning or developing player, you would expect them to win more as time goes on, right? So someone like me who's sort of learning the game, kind of new, you would expect that I would do better as the bar graph progresses. Then you can look at rated match history. So this is what I think is really useful on this site. So let's just see what we have here. So I've expanded every year. You have season is by year. The date here that it was recorded on is in this column. The venue, which typically I think is synonymous with club on this site, is roughly what continent it was played on, so North America, except for one match. The opponent, whether they won or not, so that's in green or pink, green being win, pink being loss, and their PR in that match. Additionally, you see whether it counted for BMAB experience points. Obviously, these ones did not because they are zeros. That means he wasn't submitting, his opponent was. Or that it was out of the time window. So I know the BMAB has after a certain amount of time, if you're inactive, your old ones are scrapped or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. It's on the About page. But his experience counter, it does count. So just general experience for the purposes of this site, it is there and it does count towards ELO. These ones do not count towards his average BMAP PR, but they do count towards ELO. So taking a look at this, you can see he's obviously a pretty winning player because he's super strong. And you see all these different matches, but there's a lot more to this that's pretty interesting. So you can see how he does against certain opponents. So let's just say that I want to see how Arcadi does against Karen Davis. So I can actually sort here and select Karen Davis, hit go, and I can see he's played against her 2 times, and I can see how he played in those matches. Additionally, one thing that I failed to mention, I'm just going to hit show all. In this BMAB EP column, if someone was awarded a mastership or grand mastership title, or any title for that matter, you can see the match at which they attained that title based on this little star icon here. So kind of a neat way to see when someone earned their title upgrades. So that's not really the most interesting thing here, but it is quite a cool way to see different information about a player in matches, and you can use this to your advantage. You also can submit a picture if you want, but I mean, it's not really that important. So let's go ahead and look at player titles again, and I'm just going to pull up my own profile just to do so, because I have some level of comfort with this explanation. So you can see currently playing A1, hoping to improve, but you can see a list of my BMAB experience point matches, and you can see my matches from different years, just like we were able to see on Arcadi's. But there are other cool features here. So let's start off. Let's say that I played in the Chicago Open this past weekend, which I did, and I want to say, hey, how was I doing relative-ish to the field? Was I like a big fishball in the championship division because it's such a tough tournament? Was I average? Was I above average? What was going on there? So one of the really cool things about this site is that if you click on the date that these matches were played, so I'm going to go with May 28th because that was the first day of the Chicago Open tournament, you will see all of the matches played in a given venue, which again, continent, over that date. So for May 28th, 2022 in North America, these are, I assume, all Chicago Open matches because that's the tournament that was going on there. I can see how I played relative to the rest of the field because these are all Chicago Open submissions or matches related to submissions. So what I'm seeing here is that Neil Kaz, Steve Haregrove, Carter, and Dimitri were really crushing it in Chicago. They were playing great. And additionally, I can see here that I was number 17 out of 31 on that particular day with a 6.07 because it is sorted by overall PR. So again, kind of like average open player, at least on this particular day. So it just gives you an idea of the field and who you're playing against, right? So with that being said, one of the things that I think is really interesting to kind of look at, they do have this summary down here, so you can tell which players were making submissions and which ones were just in a match against someone making a submission based on, you kind of look at the chart, you can see BMAB number. If they don't have a number, they're obviously not submitting. And additionally, if there was BMAB experience here, you would see that. Also, people that aren't involved in submissions, I guess Neil wasn't submitting that day, although they do count for Grandmasters. If you happen to play against someone making a submission, that does count for their BMAB. But you can see the win-loss. Dimitri, who was doing a submission, is 10-2. So he had 12 matches. He had a great run. He won the tournament. That's there. Someone who went 0-1, Carter, well, he only had one match that he was involved in where someone was making a submission and he was recorded. It does not count towards his BMAB, though, because he doesn't have one. He doesn't submit. But really neat way to see how you stack up to the rest of the field. Now, let's also just go ahead here and take a look at a couple of other interesting parts of this. So let's say that I am someone who's really curious to know how someone plays that doesn't do BMAB. Maybe there's someone in town who's dropping by and wants to play, a money match or something, and I don't know how they play. Well, I might be in luck because their information might be on this site if I'm lucky. So let's go ahead here. I'm just going to pick on Carter because he doesn't do BMAB and he's obviously a really good player. So let's just do that. This pulls up his screen for that particular day. That's not really that useful, but what is useful is view all results. So let's go ahead and click on that. Sorry. And you can see the match report for Carter. North America, that's cool. Country of origin, he doesn't have BMAB PR, so that's neat. And I see his rating progress chart, so how his ELO is doing. I guess a rough patch there, Carter, yeah. But you get the same information we saw on Arcadi's page. So that's not really what I'm going for, but the rated match history, what is kind of interesting is that you can actually see a player's matches from any time they sort of ran into someone who was making a submission. And you can copy this Excel-ish table into an Excel sheet and calculate their average PR. Yeah, it would be quantized by a match, but again, it gives you a really rough idea of how well that person plays. So you can determine their average PR from that. Carter obviously doesn't mind. He's a super good player. He knows it. He doesn't care about BMAB, whatever. That's his prerogative. But, obviously I could figure out, hey, he plays really strongly by doing that. So kind of a neat way to go. Now let's also just say, I'm going to just navigate backward here a little bit, that I was playing against someone in Chicago and I was supposed to send them the match file and I lost their email address or something like that, and I couldn't send it to them. Well, one of the really cool things about this site is that if you go on here and you click on the rated match and show, I would say go ahead and click on, let's see here, the date. Or actually, no, sorry, the little magnifying glass. That's what it was. Magnifying glass next to the date. You can actually see the results of the match based on, based on what happened, obviously, but this really detailed table. So you can see the score. I lost 2-9. This is an actual situation. I lost this guy's email because I wrote it down, put it in my book bag, and then lost the paper with it on there. And I also can download the XG file as well. So you can get it in the XG format, the text format, or MAT, whatever you want to use to download this and run it. It has the average PR for the match, the overall PR for the match rather, broken down into checker and cube. So not my best cube effort. And then BMAB titles and then changes and whether or not it counted towards that person's BMAB. So I can actually download the file here. So, I could say, hey, Dimitri, you're in the same club as Jim. Go ahead and tell him to just look it up on this site, and it's there. So this is really, really cool. Really neat feature because this means that there's actually a database of a ton of matches out there for people that they can download and use if they want to do that. So again, the data that's available here is at your fingertips thanks to the hard work put in by Tony, Dimitri, and Bernard at BMAB. And, I want to go ahead and say thank you, and I hope that people found this video helpful and are able to get a lot out of this awesome site. So take care and have a good one.